Hi, I'm Dr. Stan Steindl. Welcome to Compassion in a T-shirt in session with Alicia Carter. Alicia is a PhD candidate at the School of Psychology, University of Queensland. She's been investigating body image shame and interventions that might be able to help with that. She's done a systematic review. She's explored a compassion-focused model of body weight shame, and she's run an amazing randomised controlled trial of group CFT. Her passion and enthusiasm are infectious, and she's done some really wonderful work. I hope you enjoy being in session with my friend Alicia Carter. Okay, well, welcome, Alicia Carter. Soon to be Dr. Alicia Carter, although there is a little bit of marking, I think. Is there still to happen?
Yes. So I've submitted the PhD now, so we're just waiting for my reviewer's feedback. Then I respond to that through a Vivo, which is the oral defence, and walk out into that room as Miss Alicia Carter and walk out as a Dr. Alicia Carter. So it's a very good door.
Yeah, well, it's super exciting. I really appreciate you coming to have a chat on compassion in a T-shirt in session. Although, as I was just saying to you a moment ago, it's sort of compassion in a beanie today because it's cold a little bit. It's as cold as Brisbane gets, so it's actually not too bad. But yeah, I'm delighted to chat to you. I've obviously been watching your progress closely over the last not that many years, 3 years or 4 years, I guess. 3 years you probably were doing it. You got through it very efficiently, and very excited to see that you've brought it all together and your PhD is submitted. And so I was really hoping today to just get a chance to maybe hear some of the details, I guess, maybe hear a little bit of a sort of a summary of it all, but then maybe dive a little bit into the details of each of the studies that you've conducted. And in fact, I thought that perhaps if you can step into this elevator with me and we'll just sort of I wondered if we could start with a little elevator pitch, tell us the executive summary of the research you've been doing.
So I ran a randomised controlled trial of a 12-session group therapy, compassion-focused therapy program for body weight shame with people who had a BMI greater than 30. We ran systematic reviews to understand what was actually really happening out in the world with compassion-focused therapy or compassionate-based therapy programs, and if they were being used to address body weight shame and how effective they were being out there. And we also ran a survey design of the essential parts of compassion-focused therapy. So as we're aware, compassion-focused therapy was designed to specifically target shame and criticism. So we used social rank, social mentality variable, so social rank, to have a look at that a little bit further to see what was really happening for people living in a larger body, and perceived and actual, and if they were relating to themselves in a different way, a more harmful way perhaps, than those living in a smaller body, weight actual or perceived, and to see if this was actually creating any mental health struggles. And then we ran a pilot trial of the first ever group therapy compassion manualized program, which was very exciting. And based on the success for that, we ran a larger randomized controlled trial with over 70 participants, which involved survey feedback, heart rate variability, so physiological changes as well, and that was my PhD in a nutshell. Welcome to 4 years later.
Yeah, right. No, I can hear the steps, the systematic review, then exploring kind of the model, and then sort of doing a little bit of, well, developing a manual, and or sort of doing a pilot trial, and then running an RCT, which is no small thing as well. So what about the systematic review? So that was, by the sounds of it, a bit of a first step, looking at the literature and so on. Tell us a bit about or maybe even the methodology there, and perhaps, what you ultimately found.
Yeah, sure. So we ran as I said, like a systematic review. So looked at the peer-reviewed as well as thesis papers across a range of different sources to generate what research was actually being done in relation to the couple of the keywords we were looking for. So we were looking for compassion-based intervention. So it didn't have to be a therapy, just a compassion-based intervention. It had to be an intervention. So we weren't looking at experimental designs. Then we were also looking for eating or body image. So that was the focus of the interventions itself, has to be targeting one of those, with a range of surveys as well, or outcome measures that were targeting mental health aspects. So that could be mental wellness, anxiety, depression, or shame as well, self-criticism, but it was one of those. It didn't have to be all of those in a nutshell. Yeah.
So yeah, when you say kind of compassion-based interventions, yeah, what sort of were the various things that you found there?
Yeah, well, so the aim of the compassion-based interventions was that we wanted them to be specifically targeting or wanting to increase compassion. So what is kind of happening in the world of research, and not always the world of research, workshops are being created and interventions are being run that are including meditations or writing tasks about being more compassionate to ourselves. So that was actually interesting finding in the literature was that, and then why we couldn't actually do a meta-analysis was it wasn't all the same. So there were workshops that were just one-day workshops on body image, where people were receiving measures pre or post. One of the interventions in there was a randomised control trial of people in the army, and they were receiving nutritional information and meditation to increase self-compassion, and that tracked them. That was a randomised control trial that tracked them over a number of weeks, with outcomes looking at mindful eating and weight management as well in relation to their meditation intervention strategies that were compassion focused. So yeah, there's a range of different things that could have been used in their interventions.
Yeah, actually, it's sort of interesting even at that level, isn't it? That when you really looked into it, there's a lot of diversity there. There's a lot of different things that people are doing, different mediums of presentation, different lengths of treatment, different kind of components even of the interventions, and so people are really sort of working on this, trying to sort of kind of develop a way to approach body weight shame and so on. But there's well, I guess you're at the cutting edge of it really, because there sort of hasn't been several trials yet of any particular approach. It's still quite diverse, and you said there that meant it couldn't be a meta-analysis in a way. What did you mean by that?
Well, just because the studies that we found weren't all the same, basically. So people were receiving, say, one-day workshop in relation to a 6-month trial of these practices, and say within that workshop there may have been just one discussion on self-compassion, and an activity may have been a writing task or a meditation and imagery. So just because of the diversity of the exposure and the activities, we can't really form a finite, strict meta-analysis on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you find though in terms of these the diverse interventions? But what did you find in terms of, I guess, the effect there, or the outcomes?
Yeah, so a range of things. Overall, compassion is helpful, not harmful. So that's a great thing. But compassion was found to actually help with eating and health-related behaviours. So exercise engagement and mental health as well, depending on what the range of measures being used were as well. So some people, as I said, were using mental health wellness, quality of life scales. Others were using DAS and things like that, or depression, anxiety, stress scales. Also, it was mixed reviews whether it helps weight loss or building body mass as well in exercises, and that actually really came down to the target of the interventions as well. So what they were aimed to really be doing. There was actually meditation. A lot was in the realm of meditation and yoga as well, and holistic health retreats. So that helped too. Yeah.
Just a curiosity of mine, but what did you find people were using in terms of to assess compassion or self-compassion? Was there any kind of interesting sort of findings there?
Yes, there were. So the most popular scale was Kristen Nett's self-compassion scale. And a lot of people were using the total score. And more recent research is starting to use the shame scale and body shame scale, which was developed by Christine Duart's team. But that's more recent research because those scales are more have come out more recently. So that was actually what was interesting finding in a lot of these studies weren't actually looking at the outcomes that we know are directly related to compassion. So they weren't necessarily looking at the flow of compassion or strictly the shame and self-criticism or self-reassurance.
Yeah, no, it sounds like the area is really kind of a bit exponential at the moment, and so a number of the measures are really, the different ones are starting to come into it. And you
also, it's interesting to kind of think about these scales are they a specific outcome for body image and body weight as well? So I now know that the compassion teams are working on specific weight criticism, or I think instead of just self-criticism overall, but specific criticism in relation to the body. And we now have the body image shame scale that's really specifically targeting body image in relation to those internal and external shame factors that we know are quite important and different from each other as well. So yeah, it's interesting to see these scales are becoming developed, noticing that the way we feel about our bodies is different to how we're capturing other things as well. Yeah.
Yes, I noticed you mentioned sort of the importance of what the target of the intervention was versus, the various things that might also be measured. And so, yes, we're really wanting to have that specificity around the target, body image, weight-related shame kind of is, if that's the intervention's target, then we need to really kind of assess that well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. So then the next step was really exploring the model. I think you used a sort of a large survey there to kind of understand the different constructs in the model. So tell us a bit about study 2.
So yeah, the survey scale, we had almost 1,700 participants complete that survey from around the world. And that was very cool. So we used structural equational modeling. So looking at the relationship between the variables that we popped into the program, and to have a look at the strength between those. So we were quite interested in looking at whether or not the founding elements of compassion focused therapy being based on social mentality theory. So we looked at the relationship between weight actual and then weight perceived. So looking at actual BMI, as well as how large one defined themselves as on a scale of 1 to 7. And then we looked at the social rank variables, so social comparison, body weight shame and submissiveness, self-criticism, so how people were relating to themselves, so the self-criticism with inadequate self-hatred and self-reassurance, and then some mental health measures being anxiety or anxious and depressive symptomologies from the DASS scale. And results actually showed that people in higher weight ranges, both actual and perceived, if they felt shame in relation to their body. So body weight doesn't necessarily mean body weight shame. So if it did, we were actually finding that body weight shame and perceived body weight was actually related to changes in relating styles and those social rank variables as well. So higher levels of social comparison, higher levels of, as I was saying, the body weight shame and submissiveness, and self-relating was higher levels of self-hatred, which was a key one. Inadequate self was high as well, but really low levels of self-reassurance. And these were then the key predictors of mental health struggles, being anxiety and depression. Interestingly, that pathway model came alive, or was also significant if people had a lower, were in a lower weight range, but only not the actual one. So the BMI didn't predict that for lower weight ranges, but if people within lower weight ranges perceived themselves as being in a higher weight range, then that model was significant again. So it's starting to show how dangerous this perception of weight is, and what we as a culture and society have created in relation to being ashamed about weight and size, and how these are key indicators of, you know, these social rank variables, starting to compare ourselves with others, having shame in relation to our body, submitting, which a key submission here is dieting, and then how we're relating to ourselves as well through higher levels of self-hatred, and lower levels of reassurance, and mental health outcomes, right? And I think this is really what my passion was wanting to kind of shout off the rooftops, was starting to say that, you know, there's no eating disorder involved here, but this is causing, how we're viewing our body is causing such battles for everybody, and we need to be considering this as a thing. Like, yeah, something that needs to actually be addressed,
Yeah.
because it's completely created.
Yeah, so how we perceive our bodies, and then potentially the shame we feel, and perhaps even body weight shame, just really influences other and self-relating. With others, we feel downranked, we feel submissive, we feel kind of inadequate. With ourselves, we start to become self-hating and also less self-reassuring. And then from all of that, kind of arises the real mental health challenges from there.
Absolutely, and it's also starting to highlight the dangers in continuing to tell people to go on diets as well. We know the literature says time and time again, diets do not work. And so this pathway model really starts to address that as well. In when we're talking about submitting, we're talking about changing our body to a normative view of what a body should look like, even though it's normal not to be in a lower BMI range. But then the dieting, we know we can lose weight, right, on a 6 weeks, 12-week health challenge, yet reducing our levels of calories, committing to these exercise programs that that don't really reflect what we can naturally be doing in our lives, we start plateauing, dropping off, and that starts entering this inadequate self, right, and the self-hatred. Why can't I do this? And others can stick to these programs, right? So we're starting to enter this self-relating pattern that has high levels of self-hatred, high levels of inadequacy, and low levels of self-reassurance. So instead of being able to turn around and say, it's all right, it's okay to have a piece of cake for your child's birthday, or it's okay that you missed that run that day, or whatever that may be, tomorrow we can go for a longer run or whatever. That's where the lower reassurance isn't helping us continue with health engaging behaviours, and then this is leading to mental health challenges. So we keep telling people to get into this to address their weight or address their health desires and goals in a way that's creating a pathway model that is causing mental health challenges.
Makes matters worse.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it's diet culture is dangerous in a couple of ways. One is that diets don't actually work in terms of actual weight, or and sometimes can actually make that worse, but also really starts to feed the negative self-perception and all the various variables that you've been measuring there. It sort of exacerbates all that and makes that kind of worse. And so the diet culture just serves to kind of really inflame these different pathways.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Good. So really important findings, and I guess led you to sort of the conclusion that some sort of compassion focused approach might actually could work, could be helpful.
Not harmful.
And so you sort of mentioned that I guess study 3 was a kind of a pilot study, like you were giving CFT a bit of a try just to see how that might go initially. So tell us about study 3.
Yeah, so study 3 was, as you said, like a pilot trial. So we had 5 participants who completed the 12-session group therapy program in 6 weeks. So kudos to them. That was a very big commitment. And myself and James facilitated, I co-facilitated twice a week. And we analysed their change across group variables, but also individual variables as well. So we used reliable change index scores, so comparing their pre and post measures just with themselves to see how reliable their change was, but also to see if they change clinical levels of significance, if that was a thing for them. And we also took data on focus groups. So we actually were interested to see how they found the program, as a participant satisfaction scale, and as I said, through the focus groups. So we did a mixed design there, and got as much out of those 5 as we could.
Yes, it sounds like
generous souls.
Yes, they did a good job for you. They did the 12 sessions in 6 weeks. They did some questionnaires by the sound of it for groups, but also for the clinically reliable change, and then the focus groups. So tell us a little bit about the objective results first of all. What did you find pre-post with the measures?
Yeah, well, we found that the program was able to actually have improvements across all of the measures. Mm-hmm. So that being the body image shame, body weight shame, sorry, the mental health variables that we looked at, as well as compassion and health engaging behaviours too, which was fabulous. And they were seen at some of those at group levels, but then also at clinical change index as well. So those that were in a clinical range of depression, for example, or had an eating disorder at the start, actually their range reduced to a non-significant level by the end of the 6-week program, really. Very intense for them. And there was reliable change index scores as well. So all the results were generally reliable, a reliable change from the individuals too, which is very exciting. And what was interesting, we were able to actually get more feedback during the focus group as well. So that actually helped us gain a lot more data on what these measures weren't really picking up as well. So I think, as I said before, in relation to the systematic review, we were finding a lot of the scales that were being measured, not necessarily related to body weight shame or how we're relating to our bodies. So, for example, we were capturing self-criticism, yet not necessarily in relation to the body, or the compassion engagement and action scale, yet that was general again and not specific to what the program was targeting, which was the body weight shame.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That it's really important to sort of measure what we're trying to intervene with, and I mean, it's incredible really that the pilot study showed such positive results. That there was reliable and clinically significant change there. People were moving from a clinical range to a non-clinical range, but the nuance is very interesting. The focus groups, and that's really the value of a mixed design, isn't it? Here is the focus groups really gave you some clues about perhaps the measures and this idea again of specificity. How can we really try to be specific about what we're measuring? Compassion, or self-compassion, but related to the body and body image, or self-criticism or shame, but again related to the body or body image. And so that's very, very interesting kind of findings. Now, the 4th study, which of course is also dear to my heart, it was an RCT. So you did the pilot study and got some great results and some good feedback, and then moved into the RCT. So tell us about that one.
Well, the RCT was a mammoth RCT, which is fabulous. It captured once again results from group levels, as well as clinical change levels, reliable change levels, and we actually also captured heart rate variability as well. So we were able to have a look at physiological outcomes, and we haven't published our data on or analysed it for that matter at the moment, but also on group variables too. So the important part, as we were talking about before, of compassion focused therapy is the flow of compassion, and so creating a group program actually helps us have a look at the flow of compassion in time, how people, the fears, blocks and resistances of compassion when people are receiving it in relation to the group members, when we're sharing content and being vulnerable, and how that's received by others, and those barriers that are coming up and blockers and fears when somebody actually responds in an empathetic way, and what happens there. So that is another paper and some more data that we have yet to have a look at and analyse. So it was a very exciting study. I think we covered all bases as much as we possibly could. Yeah, so we got almost 80 participants who signed up, completed the pre-session measure, so over the phone. So they had to have a BMI greater than 30 and experience body weight shame, and be able to commit and be available to the sessions across 12 weeks. So this one was 2-hour sessions once a week for the duration of the program. And that, once they did that, they came in for a heart rate variability assessment, which was an hour assessment they sat there for 10 minutes and we got baseline recordings. Then we actually showed them images of Fitspiration models and plus size models that I just found on Instagram. And we cleared as they did represent those definitions. And also they were asked to bring in images of themselves. So those conditions were randomised and will also be another paper. Then after they did that 1 hour, a friend of mine randomised people into a control condition, which was waitlist control. So they either started immediately or they started in 12 weeks' time. And then we started the groups and ran 12 sessions of the very new manualized program.
The CFT manual.
CFT,
yeah. No, so you there's some really interesting ideas there, looking at you know, sort of FBRs and so on, sort of in motion. I mean, that's really fascinating. Looking at HRV, but that initial assessment with different imagery and kind of, you know, sort of seeing how things sort of change with all of that. And then getting these 80 participants kind of randomized. So actually,
and sorry, I forgot to say, we did then the post after the 12 sessions, but then we did a 3-month and 6-month follow-up as well.
Yes. Now, what was the result?
What was the result?
We're sitting here on the edge of our seats. I mean, how did the how were the outcomes with all of the participants?
It was fabulous. Could not have asked for better results. We had significant changes post-intervention, as well as 6-month follow-up and 3-month follow-up. And those changes were at reliable change index scores, as well as clinical movement as well. But yeah, we had significant results across mental health measures, the social rank measures of the self-relating styles, the shame measures, and health engaging behaviours as well.
What about, I guess, specifically, you know, the body weight shame? I mean, what did you find? Because that's really the key outcome variable, isn't it? I suppose with this intervention.
It is, and so that remained, had a significant decrease at post, as well as the 3-month and 6-month. So it was remained stable, and dieting was stable as completely to the 6-month follow-up, which was fabulous.
So it dieting behaviours changed pre and post, and then maintained as well.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing stuff. Now, this is the paper that's not yet published, I think you said earlier, but the other ones are. So I think we'll absolutely put some links to the various papers that you've got out there. And well, looking forward to sort of seeing the RCT in print. I guess, you know, I was, as I was watching you, I can see the passion, I can see the sort of the deep curiosity and interest, and I can see the delight that you feel about, you know, just the impact that these things can make. I suppose I was curious. I mean, what was this all like for you? You know, like at a personal level to make such a contribution, really, but to sort of you know, achieve these results. What was that like personally?
I think it was absolutely fabulous. And it was something that it was a meme that I had seen, I think, in my first year as well. I think from like PhD comics or something. And, you know, it just said that we think that the end result of our PhD is the thesis, but really it's you, you know, and it really is the skills that I've learned, the people that I've worked with, but I've just found it so fulfilling, what I have learnt during these 3-4 years. You know, the documents and piece of paper, that one line of a published paper on the CV, it's definitely more than that. It has been life-changing, being able to spend all this time reading and working within the field of compassion, but also connecting with so many people in the compassion community online that I've never met before, that have just been following and chatting to me along the way and just showing their support. So it's those things that have just made this such a valuable experience. And getting to work with such fabulous people so early in my career as well. I think that's where I feel very truly blessed as well. It's been such a big change that I can see has impacted myself as a practitioner as well as a person at such a great time, in my career.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And so, what's next? What more research, Alicia? Or?
Absolutely, and practice as well. So
Yes.
doing it all, absolutely. But I chatted to Russell a little while ago, and he had a fabulous question that I really can't shake from. I really just can't shake. It was actually about attachment in relation to all of this bodyweight shame, and it just made me really think about how we consider insecure attachment as being related to so many different things. But I still feel that this bodyweight shame is just so different. I mean, we can have family members as our secure attachments, yet they can shame us for our weight. So I think this is a very interesting field here, where it is just so common for your peers and your loved ones to go on diets with you, or if I'm assuming you're not on dating apps, but on dating apps you'll find people they'll say, "Oh, fatties need not apply." And it's like, so even if you know, your first, "Oh, what a twit," because I use the twit in that comment and context. You know, you swipe the left, but you're still getting an unconscious message of weight is important for intimate relationships, right? And listening to people's experience of the bodyweight shame scale or the body image shame scale, where it asks a very valuable question about intimacy with one's partner. And you know, you hear people's discussions of, "My partner thinks I look beautiful, but I don't." And it really is this social comparison between genders, I guess, within genders, sorry, thinking that attachment is for attraction, but it's very messed up, and not necessarily telling the whole story there. It's kind of a minefield on how this stuff can also be so intergenerational, and these messages kind of being handed down by presumably our safest people in the world. So there's cool things to explore, and in relation to compassion identity as well, and how we can start looking at that as an individual but also a collective as a whole too.
Yes, it's so interesting. I mean, so much of our shame can begin in relationships, and yet the pathway out is also relationships, and so that's you're interested in all of that. All of that,
yeah,
sort of,
in everything.
that wild web of what it is to be human. Well, Alicia, I appreciate again that you came to have this little chat. There's some very interesting and well, inspiring work that you've been doing there and results that you've got. So thank you very much for being on Compassion in a T-shirt.
Thank you, Stan. Do we go down the elevator now?
Back down the elevator.